Welcome back, everyone, to the Sales Show. It's Mohan and me today because we have to talk outbound sales, and there is no other person better suited than him to bring in some juice here, some really, really accurate and great perspectives from the trenches, from somebody who creates outbound experience, outbound funnels all the time for all industries. So, guys, today we talk about AI in outbound. Is it actually helpful? Is it slop? We will fight it out here. We have different opinions on this, and we will share with you only the things that work. Welcome, Mo.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I think it's just a really apt topic, especially with social media hype being where it is at the moment. And yeah, I think hopefully people will get a lot of value from the discussion.
I will represent the hype side. I will show things that work really, really well, and I think can be implemented by everybody. You will ground us back into the reality of what it actually can do and where it fails. But let's start just with whatever you are experiencing right now in outbound. What is
Sure.
actually working?
So I think that when it comes to outbound, and really this is something fundamental to any go-to-market, the fundamentals are still the most important thing. So, when we work with clients, um, it's still thinking about, well, what are they offering? What is their competitive differentiation? Um, do they know the economics of their pipeline? And what we find is that companies that don't want to get into that kind of that kind of a strategic thought process, and that kind of want to focus maybe on some of the things that maybe look a bit fancier. How do we automate this thing? How do we just find these signals and not kind of think about those fundamental levers? Tend not to do very well in comparison, unless of course those things are already in place, of course, right? But that fundamentals are still really important. And I think the last thing I just say there is, once you have those things in place, right, and you can start getting things working, AI can be a really powerful way to do two things. The first thing is to create that in the most efficient way possible as a system, as a machine, and then also to layer on top other efficiencies throughout the sales cycle. We can get into some of those examples as well.
So fundamentals first, guys, because otherwise we just scale chaos or slop. So
Yep.
fundamentals are positioning, messaging, differentiation, the offer, the pricing, the way you charge, but also the reason for charging, right? From seat-based to outcome-based, all these things matter, and let's call them the fundamentals of. In the end, it's your positioning and your messaging, and your business model. So let's go there first. Can AI actually help with that? Because that's where I have spent my last 7 days most of the time. I'm a one person with a few employees, right? So
Yeah.
I don't have a board of advisors. I cannot afford the best and the most, advisors that I would love to have. So what I did is I built my own board of advisors. And what they're doing is exactly this, Mo. They are applying the fundamentals to my business. And I can share how to build them. The first question was, and why they are useful. The first question was, so let's start with why they are useful. Right now, they are discussing if the things that I'm doing today, they have my Kanban board, so they know my tasks of today, and they're giving me feedback if the tasks that I'm doing today, let's say I'm optimizing the Hunter campaign, which is a cold emails campaign. Maybe they say, Simon, you're optimizing this today, but your strategy says something else. It says you need product market fit in that niche first before you even start the next campaign. So how I am using them is to solve the solo founder problem or the tiny teams problem that you have so many tasks, but are you really laser focused on one strategy, on winning that one thing, instead of spreading yourself too thin and doing things that don't really build upon each other? And one of those, so how I started, I thought about who would I like on my boards of advisors if I had all the money in the world, And then I said, okay, I want a guy that's really good with product market fit. I want a guy that's good with emails. I need a CTO. So I need Boris Cherny, literally Boris Cherny from Cloud Code should be on my board because I'm not technical enough and it's moving so fast, this thing. He's the only guy who I trust with technical stuff. And so I built that, literally that board. And day by day, I gave them more permissions and I asked them to be very harsh. I they meet 7:30 in the morning every day for a board meeting without me, and I see the report, and they are harsh. They're saying the pricing on this is wrong. One of them, Jay, he proposed I should introduce a new product at 199 per month because we have nothing at 199 per month, only 49 and 900. The gap is too big. So Jay says insert that pricing tier. Tim, the other strategy advisor who has a different focus, he said, no, uh, we will never introduce a new product before each current product is 100% optimized in terms of unit economics, weekly metrics. Before we don't optimize the current products, we will never offer a new one, which is right. And they were fighting. And I was looking at that. Oh my God, I would pay $200,000 for that discussion. And it was happening for $90 a month in front of me in the Discord that I built for them. And now I gave them full autonomy in that closed system of the Discord. But what they see is my daily activities, my calendar, what I'm actually doing and what I'm supposed to be doing, and which options I have for pivots, pricing pivots, product pivot, ICP sharpening. And we're discussing back and forth if we should be doing it. So it's not easy to do the fundamentals of positioning, of messaging, ICP. It can be overwhelming. I have help now.
I think that anyone who's used AI enough will have no doubt that it can come up with opinions, right? So, one thing I love about primarily at the moment, I'm mostly using Claude, even though I've sort of used them all at some point, and it's where I spend most of my time now. One of the things I do enjoy doing with it, I enjoy brainstorming. I enjoy saying, hey, like, think about this thing, and it comes up with all kinds of stuff. And there's no, yeah, like I said, there's no question that it can come up with opinions. I think that's something no one's surprised by at this point. And I think that if you get it to come up with enough opinions in enough times, it's almost unlikely that it won't at some point hit the right thing. So if they're meeting every morning, for example, and they're going around and they're going back and forth on all these ideas, it's very likely at some point they're going to give you the right idea, right? I think the question is on a few things, which is, so for example, how do you decide what the right thing is for you to do after you after you get those different ideas and you do that brainstorming? And then the most important part, I think this is the part really where, you know, uh, the reality comes to play is how do you do what you need to do?
Yes.
So let's say the conclusion is, okay, you need to optimize pricing or you should raise your price. Or for example, you need to create product market fit as an example, right? Um, how do you do that beyond, for example, let's say pre-AI, what you would have Googled to find out how to do that? So I think AI, one of the things I love about AI is that you can brainstorm forever. And I think it's a really good way to get your juices flowing, I think for sure. I think the other side of this, by the way, is what your starting point is. So if you're, new to business, if you're new to sales, you're new to marketing, and so maybe certain concepts just aren't, let's say, aren't things you're familiar with. I think AI can be really, really great. I don't think AI is necessarily, I think the value of AI above, for example, Googling it is just the speed and the context in which it's delivered to you. So, for example, if you ask a question to Google, it's going to come up with links that might be somewhat in the ballpark because it's matching that based on like, keywords and things like that. Whereas AI can condense that information and give you an answer that you want, right? Doesn't mean that the information isn't there if you Google it maybe two or three times instead of asking one question to AI. Um, So I think that there's real value, right, in being able to have that quick delivery of ideas and so on and so forth. You know, and like I say, particularly if your starting point is there's lots of new things that you're learning, right? So I think in the same way that, I for the last 10 years, longer even, when I've wanted to learn something that I didn't know about, I Googled it, right? In fact, we all even say that term, right? Oh, just Google it.
Yeah.
So maybe people will start saying things like, oh, just GPT it. People I think do say that now, right? So just GPT it or Claude it or whatever it is, right? So I don't think much has really changed in that regard. I think the reason why people are still struggling to build businesses is fundamentally because the most it can do is deliver you the information that has been there for a long time. And the how do you do what you do, it's not really something AI is going to help with in the way that moves the needle. So I think, for example, yes, you can use Claude Code to, and this is where things can get really interesting for sure, to automate something that previously took you half an hour, now it takes you 5 minutes. Um, the question is really more contextual, which is what are you trying to solve for? And if you're trying to solve for those pure process
And what
efficiencies,
should you try
yeah,
to solve for? So that's what I need my
exactly, yeah.
advisors, because otherwise I could spend 6 hours doing something and I feel productive because I'm building a landing page or I'm writing
Yeah.
an email series, but actually maybe I spent it on the wrong things because
Yeah.
it doesn't completely really take into consideration that my buyer's journey maybe is 2/3 ready, but 1/3 is leaking. I should close that leak
Yeah.
first, right? And
Yeah.
so, and you're right. The first time the board came together, they made a ton of proposals. It was in Slack, and I did nothing with those proposals because we had already, a full day going on, and now more ideas didn't change anything in my business. So I said, guys, this doesn't work. You can't just propose in Slack. And what we changed is we created a separate Discord just for this, and we went away from Slack. We went to Discord, and I gave it into their hands. So we built a Discord bot that has the job to be the chairman. So in addition to each advisor, there is one person who looks at continuity. So we made 5 proposals. Which of the 5 are implemented? Which one will be discarded? And which one are
Mhm.
now in progress in the Kanban board of the actual human team? And,
Yeah.
and so that was the next day. It was better. We introduced continuity. Sometimes also the chairman kills a discussion because he said, hey guys, you are discussing since 5 minutes something that is not the priority one. Thread killed. Stay on focus.
Right.
That happened today too. And it was something that I wanted them to do. And they killed it because it wasn't priority one. And they were right. They were right. They corrected me and they were right.
Mm.
Third thing that happened is I said, okay, guys, you are proposing all these things, but that doesn't help me a ton. You have to do those things. You have to build agents. So now you have one more job to do. You have to build agents that when there is something to fix, they go and fix it. When there is something to improve, they go and improve it. And they only ask maybe for permission, but they already have a plan and they start working. And that changed it. So
Mhm.
today I woke up, there is prospecting that I need to do. I need to do one introduction per day. I need to move forward the deals around the book licensing deals in each country. I woke up, for all of that, there was a Gmail draft ready.
Mhm.
It was 41 Gmail drafts. 20 of them were good enough for me to directly send. The other ones I started customizing. So now it took real work from me. And I'm just beginning with this. I think this has legs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think those kind of processes are where then AI really does find its feet. So, as an example, one of the things that we in the last week has sort of built out is a common thing in our process with the client is when we've come up with all the copy and we've come up with all the strategy and we've got all the lists and all the rest of it. That can be quite a convoluted data set, or not data set, I should say, but you've got a bunch of CSVs, you've got a Google Doc, all this kind of putting that into the sequencer, even that feels like a very, very small step in the whole process, is actually quite time consuming because you've got to upload everything, each CSV one by one, you've got to map all the various copy in. If you've got multiple campaigns, when you have multiple variants, it's a whole thing, right? And so in Claude Code, we just built out basically really, really great agent where we give it the copy. We don't have to clean it either because the agent understands kind of what we're thinking here. We give it the CSVs that we want to upload, and it will basically figure out the segmentation that we want to do and confirm it with us, of course. And then when we give it the approval, it will just go and upload everything for us. So that's a great example of, in my opinion, where AI is so, so powerful. You need some people might question, well, why can't you do that in like a Make or an NA10? There is an agentic element to it because when we upload the Google Doc with the copy, it needs to think about. So we have variables in each CSV that are personalized, but that's going to be different across the CSVs, and they may only apply to certain
And also, have you tried
variants of the
using
copy.
Make? It's terrible for humans. It feels terrible. It's click, 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 and if you click the wrong thing, it takes you 10 minutes to redo that.
It's a different, yeah. I think it's a different. I think, and I know that it's a very blurry kind of thing, but there's some different use case, I think, where if you're building something that's purely deterministic, if this happens, do that. If this happens, do that. You actually don't want AI because it will cause problems where you don't need problems. But where you have an agentic element to it, or you need an agentic element to it. So, for example, in this use case, the whole point is it needs to think about which copy goes into which variable. And because that's different for every campaign and for every client, it's almost impossible to build that out deterministically in something like Make an A10 without introducing the agentic element to it. That's why we want to use AI there, right? So I think, and I think teams need to think about that. It's not just about automation or no automation. Inside a process that you're automating, you have to understand sort of what are the cogent parts to it, what are the deterministic parts to it, because if you don't have an agentic element to what you're doing, and you just because you want to make it look cool, you decide to add AI in, you could just introduce tons of problems where you don't need problems. And actually, deterministic workflow will be 100% more effective for you. So that's really important, right? But I think that's a good example though, where AI is really powerful. But again, I mean, that's the thing that I think it depends on. When we're working with most clients we work with, come in with a problem of pipeline and outbound, and most of them make the mistake of saying, look, well, and often they've made the mistake and they come and speak to me, and I'm sure other agencies, similar agencies, because they don't understand where things went wrong. They'll come and say, well, we implemented this AI workflow and it's automatically doing our outbound, but we're not getting anything from it. And it's because those tools just aren't good at actually quality. They're great at, like I say, the business process automation. They're great at efficiency. But, if you haven't figured out how to resonate, I'm yet to see AI figure it out for someone. Now AI can bridge the gaps in between. So if you figure it out, you can probably then use AI to say like, okay, spin up more variations of this thing that I have already figured out. For sure, right? But there's a massive gap there. And I think that the problem with the AI hype is if you are experienced enough, you can sort of read between the lines a little bit. But most companies and most teams are just going to waste like half a year to a year diving into the wrong pool. And then they'll probably blame it on like the tools when the tools are not the problem, right? So I think the first thing people have to figure out is what actually is the thing that I'm trying to do. Am I trying to, so for example, like one of those things I see real often is a lot of AI hype around like, oh, this thing can now like manage my inbox for me, like my personal email inbox. I get a lot of emails. I'm not gonna lie, it does take time to work my inbox. That is like number 37 on my list of priorities. Right? It's not a problem that I need to solve. It will be great, sure. If I don't have to answer my own emails anymore, I don't, it's just not a problem that I'm solving, right? Equally, for example, there's somewhere check your calendar and like tell you when there's an opening or something like that, etc., etc. Again, cool, slightly helpful. It's not in the top 10 core problems.
What is in the top five?
Well, so when we speak to clients, the core problems are usually we don't know how to build out the outbound system for today's world because today you need a whole lot more. You need to understand how to build out an infrastructure properly. You need to know how to manage those infrastructures ongoing because it's a very then it becomes a variable because things change through feedback looping and so on. That's the first thing we see very often. The second thing we see very often is we have tried it and we cannot seem to resonate. So we don't get anyone replying to what we're doing. And that can be, by the way, because that's not necessarily an AI problem at all either. Like sometimes they're doing it with AI and it's failed. Sometimes they've done it themselves and it's failed. But the problem basically is no one's replying. Sometimes, very often, the problem is people are replying, but no one's coming to speak with us. And then the final problem we hear quite a lot is people are coming through the door, we can't close anything. And often they'll blame it on the lead quality, and usually it's a mix of both. So you'll often see in those environments that they just haven't got their process dialed in at all. So the lead quality, some of it's actually pretty good, some of it's not very good because they just don't know the difference, like in a more nuanced way, and they haven't built out a system that's designed to close those deals. These are the core problems, like in the space of outbound. These are the core problems that we see, and none of those things would be fixed by AI. But those things, once you have figured out how to fix those things, or you hire an agency or you hire someone who can fix those things, AI can certainly be injected to make it more efficient. No question about it. But teams that
100%.
are jumping to that first are wasting their time, in my opinion.
Yes. Those are the 5 questions we get too. Number 5, by the way, this is how we make a living by helping them closing more. And
Yeah.
the first 4, I mean, these are the questions on my mind right now as an owner. And actually, I'm getting help from AI to do that. Before that, last year, to attack these problems, I would have to call an agency. Would take me first month, they would just try to understand me and ask questions that for me were a waste of time, for them were necessary. And it was just on ramp first month. And then the second
Right.
one was A/B testing. And from the third one, it would start to be helpful, probably. But
Right.
at that point, we would have spent already 50K. What happens now is the board of advisors takes it on, and 10 minutes later, I'm going back and forth with that. Now, I have some knowledge about sales and marketing processes, but I don't think what we learned over the last 20 years is what will work forward. I think we are floor is lava kind of situation where everything's moving and we need to really unlearn and rethink from first principles. What do the people right now out there actually need? And what of all my offerings has been now commoditized and I have to let go of it? And what do they actually need? How much is already in my current offer and how much is actually not there? And I have to adapt. So that's one thing it's a struggle between me and letting go and taking some decisions around offers and products and services and pricing, which is a hard internal work actually to digest the change, to accept the change, and to pivot the offer. It's tough. It can be tough on the ego. It can be tough on, I've built all of this and I'm so smart in this. Yeah, but they don't need it anymore. They can do it on their own. That's not what they need anymore. And the other part is thinking from different perspectives. So today I've introduced a new advisor to my board. I called her Frida, like Frida Kahlo, the painter, because I needed somebody who thinks from adjacent industries. So her job is whatever we discuss during the day in Discord and in the Kanban board, what's being done, she has the job to look at it from different industries. She cannot look at it from our industry. She has to go from other industries. For example, our app has a free trial and we have a churn on the free trial. So not 100% of people who do the free trial are actually
Yeah.
continuing on. And so we were trying to find that out. Jay, I, Tim, we were all thinking very similarly. Conversion mechanism, button, etc. Copy on the button. Traditionally, you would say, traditionally. This is how you do it. Frida said, no, wait a moment. in Sweden, there is this company, they're getting 85% because they call them. So she went to other industries, other business models, because that's her job. And she was looking back from there at the current
Yeah.
problem in front of us. And she gave pretty cool ideas. We couldn't implement them yet because it's technically hard. But now we are fighting the technical battle. At least we have clarity on the strategy side. You see how we move forward bit by bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's great. I think the brainstorming element of AI is great. I just think that things we're maybe not addressing in that. So, for example, we come with these ideas, for instance, when you think about actually does it work? There's a process to making that work in reality, right? Which is the market has to tell you whether or not certain things work, which means, for example, you're going out there and running those tests effectively. Um, so AI at the moment cannot run those tests at all, right? But I think, and I think this is part of the problem, which is if you if you decide to go out and do that, right, and you say, okay, I'm going to do this myself, so I'm going to use AI to come up with these ideas, and then we'll go and test this. There's so many layers that are involved in doing that properly. So, for example, just take deliverability as an example, right? So there's a checklist of things that, to be honest with you, anyone can probably find in a reasonable amount of time online and can tick off the bucket list, SPF, DKIM, DMARC, et cetera, right? There's also a number of things that a lot of people just won't know, and AI won't know either because it's not public. You might know behind closed doors, things that, for example, we see to be at the frontier of deliverability that might not be available to everyone because it's just something that only a few agencies or a few companies are doing. For example, there was a time when what a lot of companies were doing was domain masking. And for a period of time, it was working really, really well. Now, I'm not saying that that is the reason why it's going to work or anything like that. The expertise to be on top of your space, to know those nuances so that whoever you're serving can be way ahead of the competition is just not something AI can deliver. Now, in most cases, it's the culmination of all those little things from your experience, from your networks, et cetera, that aren't publicly available that help you create the best work. So I'm not saying that someone can't come up with an idea, figure out how to send out a campaign and get something back with the help of AI. Absolutely. And I think that's a great thing because before it might be that someone just didn't know where to start. And maybe Google was helpful, but it couldn't, maybe it was a bit annoying to research Google, whereas AI can just sort of give you here's the steps, right? And that's great. There's just such a chasm between doing the thing and actually getting results from the thing consistently and doing it well.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the gap tends to be.
Hmm.
Currently, the gap still exists.
Hmm.
Almost everyone that I've spoken to who's using AI SDR has had a terrible experience. Most of the times that I talk to people who are doing these kinds of things with AI because they don't want to sort of, and by the way, it's often a budget question as well. Like when we often deal with slightly larger companies that have sales teams, they understand sort of the reality of outbound in terms of like, okay, we know what it takes to generate real meaningful lead flow in terms of meaningful conversations and what it takes to close those things. They kind of, I think what they know is that they kind of want to have the expertise that keeps them at the top of their game and keeps them ahead of their competitors and layer AI into how can we make understand totally that, for if you're a smaller business just starting out, it is a daunting decision to bring in an agency. And there it might be a case of, well, what can you do by yourself using things like AI? I think that's a great space for AI to be really, really helpful. But I always say this because I feel I don't like the idea that a lot of small businesses are, I want to be careful with my wording here, but a lot of small businesses are maybe not being given the full picture on what AI is good for and what it will not help them with. And it just leads, I think, to a lot of people wasting a lot of time. And they also end up in that time that they're wasting money because it's all opportunity cost, right? So I think, and as an example, like, you mentioned there, okay, you've got the board that comes together and comes up with these ideas, and that's fantastic, right? A great use case of AI to like help you guys come up with things where otherwise it would take you a lot of time to do. But you compared it, for example, to like an agency going out and running AZ tests, and it's just not comparable at all.
Well, this is where I will take the other side. Of course, I was like, okay, I don't think it can do it, right? But let's
Yeah.
try. Let's build a CTO. Let's model him around Boris Cherney. And so it's reading the actual change log of Entropic. It's reading his GitHub repo. So it's learning how he thinks, how he decides in kind of real time. And we're moving along. By day 3, I say, Boris, I want to test A/B email campaigns. The first one is to get people on our podcast. So this is 15 pages description of who we want on our podcast. For each one, there was an exclusion list that was longer than the inclusion list. For example, he's a CEO, but he cannot be the VP of sales, cannot be CMO, cannot be HR. So for each piece that was defined, there was even more that's an anti-ICP defined. That's
Hmm.
what I gave him. And then I said, now the technical part. Because this is the messaging. I gave him rough messaging. But then I said, the technical part, bring me 200 of them and let's start the A/B tests. I want you to test the subject lines. When that is working, then the call to action. When that is working, we move on to the next sequence. And, it would take me forever, and I'm not really good at it. It started working. It selected a software. It probably could have selected another one. I don't even want to promote the specific software. It said, I'm good with that one. Let's start there. I said, cool. Can you write it? Can you optimize it? Can you report? Yeah, I can. Okay, start. And so I started subscription in that software. 3 hours later, the A/B tests were running. The only bottleneck, we are now 2 weeks in. The only bottleneck is the warm up. We are waiting for because it's a cold campaign and we want to warm up each email 32 days. So the bottleneck is my warm up lag because I can't speed that up. But if I had 5 ready warmed up, I think we would see already some A/B proper progress. Now we're seeing some, homeopathic progress
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's just sending 45 a day. We don't have enough data.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it would be 250 a day, I think we would start learning now over the next weeks. And so I can report back in a month. So maybe you are right. It can't do it
For sure.
yet. Maybe it can. We will see. We will actually report back,
Yeah.
guys.
No, absolutely. I think obviously the key thing there is that you get because you kind of glossed over it, but it's sort of the fundamental part, which is that you gave it the messaging. So it came up with some of
Yeah.
the copy, and the offer already is something works. So this is the problem we see with companies is it's usually not if a company comes in and like they've already got pipeline working really well, I'm in agreement with you. We can build some amazing things with AI to automate this process. And not all of it, but you can make it more efficient. So I think we actually are on the same page here on the example you've just given. But usually what we're finding is when companies can't crack it, that's where they struggle because the part that you mentioned where you sort of give it messaging, and the offer that you already have, for example, that's the thing that they've gone out there with and it hasn't worked for them. And that's kind of where, right, it's a moving thing. I think the same thing generally with some of these key elements on deliverability and so on is that it is something that's always changing, right? Um, uh, and how that goes consistently over time is where it gets tricky. You can speak to every agency out there, or rather, I should say, every sales team can tell you that over time you get things like copy fatigue, you get feedback leaping through your campaigns. It means you have to switch things up over time, all that kind of stuff. The interesting with deliverability is that it's so unpredictable. So, like, we had a period of time where uh, I remember everyone was panicking about Google and some of the changes they made, and Microsoft was working really, really well. And then in more recent times, Microsoft sort of flipped around and became really difficult, right? So there's a lot of that kind of thing going on there. I think, look, like I say, I think processes is where it's really effective. I think it's the creativity, it's the strategy, and it's the oversight, which I don't think it's quite there yet on. I think that's the difficult part, right? Um, but I think we are more or less there in agreement that like when you have a messaging that's working well and these offers that are working well, I'm the first one to say it. You should be using AI to do these processes more effectively. I mean, we do this all the time, for example, in Clay, right? If we've got a very large list, like we are using AI to do relevancy checks across tens of thousands of data points and all these kinds of things, right? Um, so I think it's a balance. I think it depends on where your starting point is, as well. And I think it also depends on what you're trying to solve for. So I think if you're looking, because again, it's that difference between wanting to be at the top of that let's say it's a channel, right? So it could be if you're email or whatever. If you want to be at the top of that channel into the future over the next 12 months, 2 years, um, that requires some level of uh, dedication to it or whatever it might be. And that's usually where the perspective changes. Versus, for example, what can you do in 1 month on a campaign or 2 months or 3 months?
Yes, totally. One thing that immediately worked was YouTube. So our pain point was, first of all, we're not the proper YouTubers. We're just, wannabe YouTubers. Second, it's so many minutia tasks that it's awful. So if you want to do properly, just when you upload the video, you should select the right tags, have a very good description that follow a specific flow,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
customized, but also a clear call to action. And so it's a lot of moving small parts. And we were like, let's cut corners here, let's cut corners there. And of course, it never worked. But now I talked to Boris and I said, you know what? I'm kind of giving up on YouTube. It's too much effort. Is it really worth the
yeah.
squeeze for us? And he goes, well, what is it that creates frustration? I say tagging, description writing, and he
Yeah.
editing. And it goes, oh, no problem. I can do that. So I did do it for a few days. Every day, same time, goes through pipeline, content pipeline. We call it the refinery. Uploads the
Yeah.
next video, does the tags, does better titles than we did,
Mhm.
and maybe ours were terrible, but the ones now are better, and the tagging is much better. It's personalized for each video. We had like a
Yeah.
channel tagging strategy, like most amateurs. It's going video by video, thinking for each one how to position that. So it made our life better. And I'm not doing anything. I canceled my VidIQ membership. I canceled a ton of stuff that we had there. It's just
Yeah.
directly cloud code to YouTube via
Mhm.
via Google.
Yeah, I think that's a great use case for AI, right? And I know as well because I've done some YouTube in the past. I don't do as much anymore, but um, uh, yeah, so annoying. I think I also at some point cancel my vid. A bit like you, by the way. Great tool. I think it's
I love
fantastic.
it. It coaches
Yeah,
you.
brilliant,
I
brilliant.
like it.
It's amazing. But let's. I know we've got maybe 10 minutes or so left. Let's do something if you it might be quite interesting just to slightly tilt the discussion because we've gone I think back and forth over a lot of different use cases, right? Let's talk about the world where okay, we're now at the point where AI is doing all this stuff really effectively. And if it's okay, I'm gonna ask you a question here to
Sure.
kick us off. What does that world look like where everyone is using AI and it's actually doing what they need it to do? So, for example, everyone can produce really great quality YouTube videos, and it's just AI. Everyone can send great messages, and it's just AI that does it. Everyone can, put out really good LinkedIn content, and it's just AI that's doing it. And because it's AI that's doing it, everyone has the ability to do it just as well as each other. What do you envision that world looks like?
I will tell you what my last 6 hours looks like because I think that's the future. So I'm 46. I have 3 children. My father is 80. I see him rarely, right? I run a business. I have 3 small children. So when I'm working, I'm usually being a kind of a bad dad, a bad husband, right? And I'm working all the time because
Right.
that's the field I'm in. It's
Yeah.
very competitive. So this is how my morning looked like. Three months ago, the morning would be just, hey guys, I don't have time. Bye bye. Boom, gone. This morning was different. With all kids, I was playing and dancing. Olympia likes to dance and sing. We did dancing and singing. Federico is in the rowing club. I went with him rowing on the Danube. My dad is here, so we made breakfast together, Italian style. He's a nonno, Italian nonno. We made breakfast. In between, while the coffee was getting ready, I came here, I opened up 3 terminals. I checked what the board was doing. Board made 10 proposals. I kicked off 3 terminals. Each one was actually delivering those 3 proposals. They made money. One of them made money. So I go back to my family. Now, meanwhile, coffee is ready. You see where I'm going. So I think the integration of what matters to you, it can be different things for everybody listening, but I think what really matters to you and work as an entrepreneur, because I think everybody will be entrepreneurial in some form, either intrapreneurial as an
Yeah.
employee or entrepreneurial with your own stuff.
Yeah.
But we will be very entrepreneurial. We will have also a life. And I don't think we have to push away life. I think that will be less. You will be walking around with
Yeah.
your dog, and on your phone, Claude is reporting something back that they are doing on YouTube. And you say, yeah, I like that. Move on and enjoy your walk.
I think I agree with you that we're going to be able to, I think as humans we'll become a higher leverage, or we'll be able to be more higher leverage in what we do, as you're pointing out. You know, I've had a similar experience where we built a tool called Code that does our proposals. So I used to sit there, it takes me a long time. The other day, on Saturday, in fact, I was going out for lunch, and before I went out for lunch, I just gave it a quick. Have you used the tool Whisperflow?
All the time, all the time.
Yeah, love it, right? So I just said I gave it just a synopsis of a meeting I had on the Friday. Went out for lunch. By the time I came back, proposal done. So I think that's great. But what I was actually more getting at though was the idea that, well, not so much the individual experience in terms of how your life changes when things are automated, but more this idea that, well, okay, if everyone is able to do this stuff and the output is equally as effective, because the whole point of AI is that it's inherently democratized, right? Because everyone can access it. What does the market look like? What does a GTM strategy then look like?
Oh,
My
yeah.
take is that
Mm-hmm.
I think the inherent problem is that GTM, go to market, it's inherently competitive. So right now we're in this transition period where there's only a small percentage of our industries generally that are catching on to AI, and so we're getting ahead using it. The problem is that, as we're all expecting, eventually it's going to become so easily accessible and so good that, as you're kind of pointing out, right, anyone can just be like, okay, I want my board to be these guys, and they're actually going to come up with great stuff. And maybe by that time they connect it and it actually sends out these really great messages and content and all this kind of stuff. But if everyone can do that, the part that to me is inherently flawed is that because it's competitive, all that happens is the threshold goes up, and it's going to be the teams that actually go above AI and are actual experts putting their human input in that will get ahead. Because by
Yes.
definition, if everyone's using AI to do everything, the output's going to be the same, and resonance is based on competitive differentiation. If you are seeing great content, but it's everywhere and similar, it becomes less differentiated and therefore less high quality to you. So how do you become more competitive? And I think that's kind of where we are today with, for example, Outbound, because you have the ability to put out lots of relatively poor quality emails and messages with AI SDRs and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of teams are doing that and they're not getting results.
Yes.
There are
So,
teams doing it as well, are thinking and actually using the human input to say, how can we really differentiate? Um, and that's kind of why I think that they're getting ahead. I think that kind of won't change.
yes. This is why I introduced Frida into my life, because I think better messages will be very different from what we learned. Like I have here all the books of the traditional great
Mm.
copywriters. I have the David Ogilvy's and everybody here on my desk. I don't think I'm going to learn from them moving forward like I did the last 20 years. I think we have two things differently. Like this will be vanilla, I need pistachio, and that's not there yet. That's why I need wild thinkers on my team, people like Frida Kahlo, Rick Rubin, to really compose and re-jazz messaging. On the other question, how will our pricing, our offer need to evolve? I am in strategy consulting, and I met with other strategy consultants. One of them partner at McKinsey, the top dog in our field. And we had dinner, and we were all talking about, will be around in 3 years? Does the world still need us? And he was the oldest, and he told us that every 10 years they had this situation. Part of what they did became commoditized. So they started
Yeah.
with, we do your supply chain, we optimize your supply chain. And then 10 years later, the client was smart enough and technology was quick enough to say, no, I can do it on my own. I don't need you for that.
Yeah.
So part became commoditized. The other part, they had to move up and tackle a bigger problem. So they went from supply chain optimization to strategic management. Whoop, up one level. How do you run the whole company? We help you with that. 10 years later, management was a thing that everybody had learned. It was technologically easy to do. Communication was easy and integrated. Management was commoditized. They had to step up again. And they said, okay, we do go-to-market strategies and business model optimization. So they went one up again. And now it's again that time where they're moving one up. They say, okay, guys, you can run your company pretty well, and Cloud Code can help you with a ton of it, like literally. We will move up again. We will help you double your market cap. That will be our offer from here on for the next 10 years. So I think this is what's in front of all of us. And that's why I need a board of directors here and a board of advisors, because I have to discuss this thing. Okay, what is our next step? And should we be the first to go there and risk it? Should it be the second mover? Should we watch others fail first? All these kind of discussions, I think, really matter. And what is for your client the next bigger problem that you should be starting to tackle? Asking bigger questions, solving bigger problems. I think that's the work in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it has to be led by the companies. And that's where I think the reality maybe shifts. Like I say, 95% of the meetings I have with companies, SMBs, a lot of mid-market companies, will sit there and say, we just can't seem to crack outbound. And either we have tried AI and it's just failed, or we don't really know how to we can get AI to come with some ideas, but like, okay, but how do we run this entire system for the next 6 months to generate revenue from it? And those still seem to be the problems. But I think you're right, it's going to change very quickly.
And after they solve
How it
that,
changes, I don't know, but
yes, and after you solve that for them, the next bottleneck comes up, which how do we close them? And how do we keep them? And how do we activate them? And how we do upsell and them and get referrals from them?
yeah, which is ironic because it's actually, we always tell companies that they have to figure out that question. For if a company doesn't have and hasn't figured out how to sell cold, they probably shouldn't be trying to scale out or build out processes for a outbound machine. They need to first build out what's going to close, then go and test it. And so, and I agree, there's a little bit of overlap there because you want to test message market fit, and then close and so on, and right. Probably why most of these companies still go and either hire someone internally or for example work with agencies. I mean, we all saw, I think there was recently the post of Anthropic has listed like a ton of job openings for BDRs. Right? So we know why. We know why. So I think there's a huge potential. I think AI has amazing use cases. Like I say, you've built out amazing things. We've automated key processes now with Claude Code. Really amazing use cases, but there's still a massive chasm from a quality perspective, and we'll have to see how things unravel, I guess.
Something is reading aloud here. Let me close it 1 second.
Not a problem.
Not sure if I can close it, but we were at end anyways, guys. Mo and I, we will be here next week too, solving your go-to-market problems. So, hey, give us your go-to-market questions right now. Are these the 5 that Mo just mentioned? Do you have bigger ones? Give us your problems and we will solve live. Thank you guys. Keep rolling, everyone.
Thanks.